Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining us for another video. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Anna. Hope you enjoy our content. My email inbox is literally bombarded with stories from people who have been living in the US or Canada or other English-speaking countries for years. I mean 10, 15 years. However, their English and pronunciation aren't nearly at the level they needed to be or wanted to be. At the same time, I very often come across information that it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, how you learn and how much you learn. You have to go live in an English-speaking country if you want to achieve a good level of English, and that this is the only way. Immersion in the language is very important indeed, but I want to and I'm going to debunk this statement. Everybody's in different circumstances. For example, someone who lives in an English-speaking country but doesn't speak English much because they live in a community where people speak their native language. They may also have a job where they don't actually need to use English. Thus, their English is not improving at all, although they live in an English-speaking country. Then there's someone who lives in an English-speaking country and actually communicates in English, but feels that they really need to improve their speaking skills because they affect their jobs and relationships. But because they are in that environment and they're trying so hard, it's like an everyday struggle to communicate in English. They feel exhausted and overwhelmed because they thought it was supposed to be a lot easier to improve their English while being in an English-speaking country, but it's not. In reality, when you're there, you have so many other things to think about besides your English. They still need to make a decision to put in the time and work to be able to improve their English and find what works for them, their perfect solution. If you went there specifically to learn and improve your English, then yes, you will improve. Or if you went there to study in school or college, you will need that required minimal level, but you will be using it and you'll inevitably improve. If not, English will not magically be uploaded into your brain. There's no special machine that uploads a language into your brain when you cross the border of that country. People around them, unfortunately, don't stop to correct their mistakes or explain grammar rules or help them find words or work on their pronunciation. In reality, what happens is that over time, they get tired of communicating with them because they have to try very hard to understand them. People will not waste their time on teaching you English at your workplace or on the streets. This is not universal, of course, there are exceptions. Can you imagine how stressful it would be if you thought, okay, my English will skyrocket the minute I'm in the US or Canada or whatever. And then you're there and you realize that, and this is what happens in 90% of the cases, that you can't express yourself, let alone understand native speakers. Your brain boils up. Everywhere you go, people speak English. It might be not as fun as you think. You need to go to the bank, you need to speak English, and more importantly, understand it. Or what if you want to rent a car or an apartment? Or if you simply want to place an order in a restaurant and the waiter just can't understand you and eventually brings you rice instead of French fries? Or what if you don't know how to say what you want at all? Of course, that if you power through all the difficulties and communicate in English no matter what, plus learn English, you will improve there eventually. Probably faster because you'll be surrounded by English, but it's also under a question mark. It depends. Faster than you would if you didn't go to live in an English-speaking country. And in this case, if you're ready to work and determined enough, the English environment will be super beneficial. However, it would still take time and for some people even years. So please, please, please don't waste your time on this illusion. You have to learn and do whatever you can now. You can learn English, even up to the level of a native speaker. And it doesn't mean that your English and pronunciation have to be perfect. There is no such thing as perfection. What it means is that you feel confident communicating in English. You have the feel for it. You feel comfortable with it. You're not afraid of speaking English, and of course that you understand native speakers, non-native speakers, understand English without any difficulties. And the thing is that you don't have to know every single word and you're allowed to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes and nobody knows everything. I repeat, everybody makes mistakes and nobody knows everything. This is not to say that you can just relax and forget about improving and learning. It is to say that it is possible as long as you don't limit yourself and don't put yourself in a box. Like, for example, as long as you don't think that it's pointless to work hard on your English in your home country and you do very little learning, but mostly you just wait until you get to an English-speaking country. And don't listen to those people who say that it's impossible to learn English up to the level of a native speaker while remaining in your country and you have to move to do that. Or the ones who say that it's still impossible even being in an English-speaking country, and especially that it's useless to work on your pronunciation and accent because you'll never sound like a native speaker. Don't listen to this negative and demotivating talk. Again, you don't have to be perfect. Just keep in mind one little thing that happens to be a game changer. If you're working on your English and pronunciation, even little by little, but every single day, you are improving. People who say that it's impossible usually are just angry, that they probably still haven't achieved the level that they wanted, or that it turned out to be a lot harder for them than they thought it would be. And they simply try to talk everybody else out of even trying so that nobody achieves this level, which would crush their self-esteem completely. Because if others fail, they can justify their failure by saying that it's simply impossible and by pointing out the flaws of others. Is the easiest thing to do. However, those people are not villains and they don't want to harm others. This is just their way of coping with their own insecurities. Your job is to decide what to believe in and who to listen to. Now, picture this. You come to an English-speaking country with a pretty good level of English. You can communicate, speak. The most important thing is that you could speak and you're confident. Even if you make mistakes, you don't panic. It's okay. You correct yourself or explain something using other words. It would be so much easier and more pleasurable. And in this case, when you already know how to learn and you keep learning, your brain is ready to absorb English. It's tuned in for it because at this point, learning has become your habit. And in this case, you will be improving every single day, and one day your English will be amazing. Now, let's talk about what you actually can do. How can you improve your English now? Depending on your circumstances, your financial situation, your family situation, your availability, you might use different self-education methods or courses. I'll link in the description all the courses that I think are really good and worth your time and money, so make sure you open that description box and check them out. I can't give one and say that it's perfect and the best of the best. That's not how it works. What works for me may not work for you, so check them out, do your research, and decide for yourself. I'll also link my video where I talk about how I immersed myself in the language. Maybe it'll help. Now let's talk the things you can do if you can't take a course. A lot of people in the comment section of my videos ask if there's someone who would like to practice English with them. I think it's a great option to find a conversation partner and potentially a friend. You can use free sources such as the internet. You can find literally everything on the internet these days. There are a lot of different websites where you can find a conversation partner for free, as well as use YouTube, such channels as ours and thousands of others, where you can consume information for free. There are Facebook groups and Instagram pages where you can find conversation partners and even take part in speaking clubs. I'll link some of them in the description. If you're determined enough, you can work on your own and do something in addition to whatever it is that you're already doing, so not to lose precious time waiting for better times. I'll link my videos in the description where I talk about this as well. I know that a lot of people want to work with a teacher but just can't afford this. That's why I suggest that you please consider the things that I just mentioned. So guys, that was my little ramble on this topic. I really wanted to talk about this and I hope that I managed to get my point across. Subscribe to our channel if you aren't yet and click all those buttons notification bell to be notified when we upload new videos, and like the video. And I'll see you in the next one.